welcome to another session of Application Development Today. My name is Don Jackson. I'm your host. I'm also a chief technologist here in our Application Delivery Management business unit inside of OpenText. And I'm pleased to have with me today to talk about the topic of test data management in a modern world, Mr. Mohammed Huck and Mr. Brian Majora. So let's do a round of introductions. Mohammed, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Sure. I bring the background of IBM, Red Hat, HP into the cybersecurity space with the OpenText and Micro Focus. So we are taking care of your data security platform from discovery to structured data management to protecting, sensitive fields, including pseudonymization, if you will, and anonymize some of those data sets. That'll deep into the discussion of your test data management for your beginning of life cycle, middle of life cycle, and your whole end-to-end product life cycle management here.
Awesome. And Brian, if you want to just introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, hello. My name is Brian Majora. I'm a solution architect at OpenText, and my background and specialty is in data privacy around structured data. So one of the use cases around data privacy is with today's topic, test data management. So I'll be taking through and starting some of the discussion around that today.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you guys in here. I always try to make sure that whomever we have as featured guests in here, right, are kind of, what I would consider experts in the field, right, of whatever topic we're talking about. So as everyone can hear from your introductions, you guys both have a lot of knowledge and experience in this particular field. So let's just jump right into it and talk about when we say test data management or TDM, what is it that we're talking about it and why is it important?
Yeah, so let me take that. Test data management is really a process. And it's a process of creating, procuring, and controlling data, usually structured data, that can support non-production users, such as maybe testers, developers, trainers. They need access to data to do their day-to-day job, and test data management provides them usable data to do that.
So I think about, because as the audience is aware, right, I spent 17 years as a customer before I came over to the dark side. I mean, before I came over to work for a vendor. And, I think about we had a large SAP implementation that we were doing, and we had created a golden copy of the image that we scrubbed a bunch of data. It took, 2 days to load that environment up in the lower environment. And then we ran a data seeding load test to go ahead and do that. These are all examples of test data management activities that you could do. Maybe not necessarily the most efficient way to do it when it takes, 2.5 days to reset your lower environment, but it is the process of doing that. So the question would be, okay, so why can't I just test in production or just test the production data and just not worry about doing test data management?
Well, using production data would be very effective and efficient for those users. Production, no data is as accurate and has the right kind of diversity as production data does. So that means you need to have users or customers or patients with the right age ranges, the right salary ranges, the right number of accounts and transactions and things like that. So the diversity of the data in production is perfect. You use that data and you perform your testing, and testing goes through and resolves all the issues. That data is going to work in production. The problem with using production data, obviously, in today's climate of privacy and regulations is we need to protect personal information, PCI, PII, personally identifiable information, credit card information, health information. Production users that use that data are trained in privacy to use it. They have the right security checks, and those production systems and environments have the right security mechanisms warranted by to protect that privacy of the data. Testing systems, development systems, or training systems don't have that kind of rigor typically built into them. And the users don't have the training and the security clearance to be able to see that real data. So testers still need real looking data. They still need data with the right number of transactions that mimics production so that they can test all the different scenarios. And developers and trainers, they need real looking data, but it can't be production data. They can't have access to real customer or patient information. So that's why we need test data management. That's why we need a process to give them real looking data that mimics production, but is not real data, so that nobody's privacy is compromised or risked through the testing or the development cycle.
Yep, and nobody wants to be on the cover of the Wall Street Journal because their test environment got compromised and it had real data in it, right? It had
Absolutely.
PHI, private health information, or you mentioned PCI, private credit card information, or PII, personally identifiable information inside of there. And so if your lower environment gets compromised and you don't have that data in there, yeah, it's bad from the sense of, you had a compromising situation that happened, bad actor was able to get in, but the data that they got is meaningless data. So that's kind of what we're talking about when why is this important, what is it? So what kind of challenges do we typically encounter? Because you guys have done a lot of work in this particular space. What kind of challenges do you encounter when you attempt to adopt a TDM solution or framework? And you mentioned, right, it's a process, right? Technology facilitates that process, and we at OpenText sell that technology. But it's really about the people in the process. Is just like when you talk about DevOps, people, process, and technology. It's about the process. So what are those challenges that you run into when you attempt to adopt a TDM?
Don, I think Brian gave a very good introduction briefly and some of the details there. So you also talked about masking production data or scrubbing some of this production data, and right, that fits right into the test data environment, test data management. So that what we're talking about here, you were talking, Don, is the production cloning slowness. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you need the whole set of data for the age range, for transaction set, for the locality, and all kind of test scenarios. Our QA folks are very well known for it. They have well-designed QA process, very mature process. So I would say on the top of what Brian just added, the process, into that process you have production cloning, and that could be very slow times. And then we can talk detail. Some of them would be, I think you guys already mentioned probably at the beginning that data is not unavailable into the test data environment or lower environment. Maybe it's a unit test, maybe it's a QA test, maybe it's a smoke test, whatever you have. Or unavailable test data. Also, the important part is the outdated test data. So those are some of the challenges. The third challenges I brought here today, for the audience, hearing live today, or in the future they will be hearing. So some of the companies, some of the vendors, some of the customers we have seen, they have a data masking process, a solution to gain some test data set in the lower environment. What happened is they have $1 million worth of data protection, data discovery platform, and they're thinking, hey, I can mask that data set and then bring that the PII, the sensitive fields, and along with other 23 other columns into my lower environment, and now I can start. And now I can start testing with it. Some of the challenges that I have personally encountered with few of my customers, that when you have that data protection platform, sometimes their solution, their agent base. As an example, what is agent base? Let's say you have a RDBMS, relational data management system. You may have big data or Oracle or SQL Server. Then this data protection platform would sometimes have agent running in the operating system processes of that CentOS Linux or Oracle Linux, or your Windows 16 for SQL Server 12 combination. So those agents are running all the time in the production layer where your protection and security action is happening. Let me take a pause here and then just take you through that process. I hope so far it's clear to the audience here.
Well, I'm understanding it, so hopefully, I think I'm kind of sometimes lowest common denominator. So if I'm getting it, I think most of the audience will be getting it too.
I just want to make
So,
sure we're talking the same language here.
yeah. So you talked about synthetic data. So this is I mentioned in my real life experience, right? We loaded up the environment, and then we had to run a seeding load test to get specific data that we needed in there, because sometimes production didn't have the specific the data scenario that we needed. So we had to make sure that we had that specific data scenario needed, like maybe the combination of a patient that had these three symptoms and these four diagnoses in order to get prescribed a specific medication in a nuclear pharmacy world, right? So, and have it calibrated for that specific time. Well, you don't always have a patient, right, that has that. So you have to make sure that you get that specific data scenario within there. So you talked about synthetic data generation as one of your points there. Time was the other one. And then the third one being agents that you had on there, right?
Okay. So I want to drill a little deeper into the agents. Some of the platforms will have agents. So if you take a snapshot of your production Oracle, and then you archive, that archive usually have data sets, the Oracle server processes, and you can bring it back anytime in the lower environment. Now you realize if you have a Linux process or Windows services running with your snapshot or a bounded whole package solution, and you are using, your data in the magnet, data in the disk is masked. But if you want to bring it in a lower environment where same version, same Oracle snapshot is running, now your agent is also enabled there. So you have to be careful that, okay, if you disable that particular agent in lower environment, how do your existing SQL query, how is your wrapper call, how does your the Oracle a boot up newly booted up system of Oracle is working properly. So those are some of the challenges we have. In some cases, I want to finish here after the sentence here. In some cases, we have seen agentless solution. So you mask your data without any agent at all. You have a library path, library in the call path, and you protect, unprotect. You archive that. You take a snapshot of that Oracle SQL Server. Now you take that whole packaged data set, the mechanics, the tools, all those things into lower environment. You don't have any agents, so none of this process is need to run from the security platform side. Boom, your SQL, all of the SQLs would be firing, and your store proc will work as it. So this is one of the challenges that we have seen in the marketplace.
Okay, great. So we touched a little bit on synthetic data creation. So is there a rule of thumb of when I should use synthetic data versus mass production data, or is it just on a case by case basis, or what?
Yeah. So the two approaches of resulting in a usable test data set. The first is to use production data, identify what's sensitive in that, and then either take all of that data or subset it and mask or transform the data in some way to make it safe but still usable. That's starting with production data, and that ensures you have the right diversity of numbers of transactions in various tables, customers with the right number of accounts and things like that. It mimics the production diversity of the data. But what if you have a new application? It's just coming on board and you don't have data yet. It hasn't even gone to full generally available production yet. So you don't have production data from years that you can rely on. In that case, you need to synthesize the data, because testers still need to do testing, developers still need to do their development, but they still need some data to work with to do those jobs. So for that, all you really need is to understand the data model, the underlying relational data model of the database. And then you need to describe what kind of data should be in there. Okay, I want to have 10,000 customers, and every customer should have between 5 and 7 accounts each, and they should have or employees with salary ranges or age ranges between that. If you can describe the profile of the data, then that gives you the ability to create or synthesize data out of nowhere. You're using the existing data model, but you're populating that data model with synthesized data. You're not starting with production data and masking. And the other reason to use that synthesized, so the first reason to use a synthesized approach is if you don't have production data to start with.
Sure.
The second reason is something we've seen some of our customers say, hey, we don't want the production database to be involved in this process at all. It is so sensitive. We are so worried about the risk tolerance of accessing that production database. We don't want you to even touch that database from the beginning. We don't want you to extract it, mask it, or do anything because something might slip through. Well, in that case, okay, fine. Just give us the data model, all the empty tables and how they're related together. And then again, we'll use a synthetic approach to create that data for testers. There's no connection to the production data. Risk is completely averted in that case. So two reasons. One, production data is much easier to use because you have data and all you have to do is mask it or scramble it or transform it in some way. Synthesized data, a bit more work because now you have to come up with a profile of what kind of data should be in there. And once you have those rules, then it's just some logic and some programming to create that data.
Awesome. So one of the things that we always try to take because of what we talk about on this particular series is how has the changes in the development process impacted or potentially not impacted the topic that we're talking about. So in this particular case, how has the advent of modern DevOps and agile practices where we're accelerating what we're doing, how has that impacted or has it not impacted test data management as a practice?
Yeah, so this is a great question. Again, the CI/CD, your Jenkins, and all the tools that we know of, as well as, I come from the Red Hat world, so I can talk about a little bit of Ansible towers. So if you have all of those CI/CD, the value stream management process for your product lifecycle management, the PLM that we just talked about a few minutes back. So I want to refer back to that beginning of lifecycle, middle of lifecycle, and then the end of lifecycle. You have certain activities happening for your services, and then each of these services, may have a certain set of data, certain category of data, or a same set of data that you're passing through. But if you take a temporal time series idea, a customer purchase habit, a few years back versus today versus tomorrow, that has to tie back with your services that you are creating or services you are retiring or reusing. So all of those, DevOps, once you bring that, CI/CD, the actual, it started from the, the DevOps and then the shift left, all this model. I want to add to the shift left, taking security to the, at the beginning of your journey. So at the beginning of your ideation product lifecycle management, you and I have a certain set of data that is, not my mom's information. That is not my neighbor's, dogs, disease information, or Boston General release notice from hospital people that is, leaked from AWS, some public cloud is not needed there. So all of those.
Well, it's funny you mentioned using personal data. It just reminded me, my first job out of high school, right? I worked at a retailer where it was a catalog showroom, right? And we asked for the phone number and address so we could mail out catalogs to them. And invariably there were customers who didn't do that. And I always would had a default back to like my grandmother's phone number and address, my mom's phone number and address, my phone number and address, so I could just do that. So I was actually doing that as a real user of the system way back then. That's kind of funny that you mentioned that.
Right. So those, to avoid at the same time, the DevOps CI/CD, not just for the development perspective of your solution, of your technology, of your services, or fulfilling that, end customers use cases. You also have this, same CI/CD, the value stream management, the VSM, if you will. It's also embedded into your, testing, from ideation to testing to everything, releasing, and the maintenance too as well, right? We're going to talk about a little bit here as a predictive maintenance. I want to go back a little bit on the synthesizing synthetic data as well. So let's see, you have a product or tool set or some analytics, self-service BI, data science kind of tool. Now you want to know, who is getting, who is coming back to the hospital in the next 6-8 months, right? At that time, you have all the disease, medicine, symptom, duration, age, ethnicity, and all of those are sensitive data combined in a data set. Now how do you take this data and then anonymize, and then not only that, you add noise, statistical noise into the system, and then bring back to your CI/CD model, maybe Ancillary, maybe Jenkins, maybe some whatever tools that we don't know yet, and then it just have into the process. So this is very modern process, very modern updated way of bringing your production data, lower environment data into test environment. Last sentence would be here. I've seen a tool that can, based on the need of testers or product developers, that particular tool, and it's from Blue, it's one of the largest companies in the world. They have their tool point to any data sets, any environment, anywhere. So we've seen a risk associated with that if that particular users don't need to see an environment, a sensitive field in a lower, deeper, secure environment. And if the tool allows you to point that and then bring data, so all of the authentication, authorization, access control need to be figured out within that, CI/CD model. So those are some of the, good things, and the pitfalls and challenges as well.
Yeah. So, and I think about too is speed. So, one of the big goals of agile and DevOps is to accelerate, right? Accelerate delivery. And we always talk about automation of whatever your process is. I think test data management is a prime candidate for that as well, right? I can't wait for engaging in my pipeline. I can have a stop in my pipeline to let the DBA go out and do a bunch of things that they have to write a bunch and massage a bunch of queries in order to populate data in order to then continue my pipeline, right? I need to digitize, I need to automate that process of TDM and get a tool for that. Obviously, we had OpenText. Love to have that conversation with you. So one of the things that I always ask about when it comes to any topic that we're talking about is the impact of AI. AI is everywhere in the world today, right? It's impacting nearly everything that we do inside of application delivery management and in IT in general, information technology in general. How will potentially, if it hasn't yet, in your opinion, so this is an opinion question, right? How will AI impact the test data management tooling process and the people?
All right, so I can give you a concrete personal example, and I've been a developer for a while now, and so we have what I've seen before, that lexicon, a term. Let me clarify. Lexicon is a fancy word for dictionary. You have the names, the types, and different concepts in dictionary, whatever dictionary you have. So in the case of data sets, databases, or sensitive fields, you also have dictionary or lexicon. Like you're an aircraft manufacturer, as an example, and you supply those to the Fed and the Raytheons and Northrop Grumman and all those people. So now you have to have all of those particular term, and then idea, even process. That's like a dictionary. Now, if you use the AI tool to create a set of synthetic data, here's the concrete example comes in. So we added somebody's name. That particular name is not actually in the Latin dictionary. What we had is a Latin dictionary added into the system, but the AI tool created some gibberish, same formatted name, but when we search for that particular name, because it is a name, but we match against that Latin dictionary lexicon, now my discovery tool that I want to use to create test data now cannot see it, because that particular Eastern, some of the Asian countries' name is not in the dictionary. So that bypassed that particular name, even though that is sensitive to not maybe to me, but for that particular family, that's a sensitive name. So the AI is coming closer. The gap is getting close. So all of those need to be thought through before you actually see. But AI is great. Everybody's loving it. But at the same time, you need this human, this project, this ideation, this process understanding very well where it's gonna fail. What is my null pointer exception here? All those things.
Sure. And I would think too, if I take my head and I apply the concepts of large language models of Chat GPTs, Bards, those type of things to what we have to do, if you're able to train your large language model on what it takes to do that, maybe it becomes a lot easier to adopt a test data management process, because you can train it what is the rules of sensitive data, and then you can maybe at some point you'll be able to pick up the microphone and say, hey, I need 100 million records for this environment, and because you've already trained the large language model, it knows how to do that, and I don't have to go through and run a bunch of jobs and do that. It can do that for me. I don't know, maybe that's something that'll be there in the future.
Let me add a sentence here, and then Brian can also come in. I've seen Brian does, he adds all of those dictionary into the profile, into the system, so that grammar set or rule set or that particular term listing, we can scan. So the reason I shared that, so AI can know and do all of those things, but you have to know what kind of names, what kind of data set, what specific flavor you're looking at, and then obviously that training, the pickle file, all of those things need to be coming in, and it's not coming automatically. Somebody somewhere need to think through. That's my idea there. Brian, if you want to share something about a term list and all of those things, how accurate or doesn't need to be accurate at all of those things that you've seen in your use cases, Brian, with your customer.
Yeah, well, I mean, just to add, the move towards AI is a journey. It's happening at a steady rate. So building that intelligence into your system to be able to protect and ultimately make sure you come out with a quality output of usable data. That's where the AI will come in. So the ability to automate some of the process of discovering what data is sensitive and what data isn't. So tuning that process, getting better at that, getting more efficiently, instead of in the old days you would have to script all of that out manually, and
Right.
and every single system would be a redo, a fresh development project from start to beginning to create that some kind of test data. So the AI is helping speed up some of these processes. So training the system to identify sensitive data, training the system to know how to de-identify certain types of data because it can recognize what a credit card, what an email address, what a first name in different languages from different jurisdictions looks like. So it's a journey. It's getting better. It's making things easier, and I expect it'll continue to do so.
Awesome. Well, guys, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today about test data management. It's something that I wouldn't say, a lot of us, especially in the application development space, it's not something that it's kind of a necessary evil, if you will, right? I don't wake up in the morning going, oh, I can't wait to go mask data. Man, that's just what I wake up to living to do, right? But it's something that we have to do. And I hope everyone is able to do that. And can protect themselves from violating regulations like some of the California regulations that are out there, the European Union regulations that are out there specifically around data privacy. I always try to give everyone a chance to impart their words of wisdom, any parting thoughts. So we'll start with you, Brian. What parting thoughts would you have for the audience?
Geez, what parting thoughts?
Brian, that gives me an opportunity to say something before you say. So the idea is, Brian and I work at the field. We have, solutions. We have some sort of, we kind of maintain a reference architecture, set of reference architecture based on your QA needs, based on your data security platform. Maybe it's a discovery, structured, unstructured data. maybe it's categorizing, cataloging, risk tagging, all of those things, and all of them actually plays a great role into your being able to test your own system. A developer just tested a widget. You don't want to trust it. Sure, that's why the unit test, all sorts of testing pipelines are there. So Brandon and I can definitely help not only just ideation perspective from the where the rubber meets the road, that actually how a large, mid-sized, small corporation or customers actually takes this through process, not only first time, but the 9th or nth time. How do you get updated with the new technology, new tool, new development happening?
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'll just add, there's test data management, or TDM, has been around for quite a while. So there's a lot of mature best practices in terms of the approach. And I would, we offer a solution that is contemporary and follows those best practices. So, have a look at our solutions, have a look at other solutions. They're there to help in the test data management creation and process. So.
Yes, it's always a good parting thought, suggestion to not reinvent the wheel, right?
Right.
I'm just picturing the BC cartoon with the guy with the wheel, and he's got the circular wheel versus the square wheel.
Right.
Guys, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it. And I encourage everyone to go ahead and join our next session. Our next session is going to be talking about SLAs, service level agreements, in a cloud world. How has that changed as we've shifted into cloud? What's the impact of SLAs on your cloud relationships? Thank you so much once again, Brian and Mohammed, for taking the time out of your busy days. Thoroughly enjoy the conversation. I like to learn about topics that I'm not, I wouldn't consider myself an expert in TDM, but I loved being able to hear your guys' thoughts today. Thanks again for taking the time today.
It was great talking to you as well.
Take care, everyone.
If you liked the video, please click the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you get notified when we release new videos.